Hello and welcome to the National History Day Quiz Show. Thank you for joining us. By the end of today's show, you'll have the lowdown on the primary source collections you should know about when starting out on your next NHD adventure with the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia's Library of American History, located right here in Center City, Philadelphia. Today's episode is all about the 2018 theme, conflict and compromise. And to my right, we have our contestants, Kim, John, and Brendon. Without further ado, let's begin. Kim, you're up first.
I'll take wartime, please.
During the Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress targeted for arrest members of this pacifist religious group.
Who are the Quakers?
Correct. Many Quakers in the colonies were critical of the British government, but their religious views were against fighting in wars. Quaker meetings discouraged members from getting involved in revolutionary activities, which seemed suspicious to the new United States government. Worried that the Quakers might be spying for the British, the Continental Congress had them arrested and exiled in Virginia in 1777. The exiles were told that they could be released if they swore loyalty to the new government, but many of them refused to compromise. They argued that they were innocent and that the government had no right to arrest them and keep them from their homes and families without a fair trial. They would only accept an unconditional release. Fascinating. Now, John, you're up.
How about civil rights?
Founded in 1966, members of this civil rights group advocated for Black Americans to take up arms and to defend themselves against racist violence.
What is the Black Panther Party?
Yes, correct again. The Black Panther Party had a more confrontational style of resistance than some of the other civil rights groups at the time. Alongside their armed patrols of police, their work also emphasized community programs that provided food and clothing, healthcare resources, support for youth, and legal aid.
Interesting.
Yes, it is interesting, Brendon. The Panthers would make a great topic. Your turn.
I'll take civil rights also.
John Fryer's 1972 speech to the American Psychiatric Association led to the organization's removal of this from their list of mental disorders.
What is homosexuality?
Right again. As both a gay man and a psychiatrist himself, John Fryer's speech was a significant contribution to the association's decision to back down from their stance that being gay was an illness. For professionals like Dr. Fryer, coming out as gay was a huge risk. So Fryer protected his identity by giving the speech in a mask under the name Dr. Henry Anonymous. For our next round, we go back to Kim.
Let's keep it going with civil rights.
Civil rights leaders like William Still and Octavius Cato campaigned for the desegregation of Philadelphia streetcars during this national conflict.
What is the Civil War?
Correct. From the establishment of the first streetcar line in Philadelphia in 1858, African Americans weren't allowed to ride. During the Civil War, black troops returning to their camps to fight for the Union were often forced to walk. Families of wounded soldiers often had no way of visiting their loved ones in local hospitals. Though newspapers like the Philadelphia Press and organizations like the Pennsylvania State Equal Rights League, black Philadelphians petitioned their community and lobbied state lawmakers for support. It was a long battle, but the lawmakers eventually compromised. A law banning segregation on public streetcars was passed in the state legislature in 1867. On to you again, John.
Community, please.
Speaking of Octavius Cato, in 1867, Octavius Cato and fellow intellectual and educator Jacob C. White Jr. led the Pythians, which became the leading all-black Philadelphia team at this game.
What is curling?
So close. The correct answer is baseball. Led by two prominent members of the black community in Philadelphia, the Pythians games became important gatherings for discussions among black leaders about the social and political issues their communities faced. During their brief run, the Pythians often challenged and played with white teams as a way to advocate for acceptance within white society. And back to Brendon for another shot.
I'll try community.
Threatened with demolition with the impending construction of the Vine Street Expressway, the Holy Redeemer Church and School served as an important community hub, and became an icon in the movement to save this ethnic neighborhood in Philadelphia in the 1970s.
What is Chinatown?
Yes, and this topic would be another great choice for National History Day. The movement to save Chinatown was a grassroots effort led by members of the community. In order to pressure the development authorities to compromise, activists needed to gain support from both inside and outside of their neighborhood, with petitions, protests, and persistent lobbying of city and state lawmakers. Their efforts were successful, and developers were eventually forced to scale down the project and draw up a new plan with significant community input. Back to Kim.
Early U.S.
In 1794, farmers in western Pennsylvania took up arms in protest of a new tax on what?
What is whiskey?
Not just whiskey. The tax was on all liquor made in the United States. Many rural farmers distilled their grain into whiskey because the longer shelf life made it easier to sell. Western Pennsylvania farmers were outraged by the tax, and they violently rose up in protest. Compromise was not on President Washington's mind when he reacted to this whiskey rebellion. He sent in a force of 13,000 troops to subdue it. And on to you. We're just out of time. We'll see you all again soon. In the meantime, be sure to check out our resources guide for these topics and more on our website. For those of you who live near Philadelphia, come in after school on Tuesdays through Fridays for help with your NHD project. The Historical Society of Pennsylvania has over 21 million documents to explore, and we'll help you find just where to start.